Donald Trump has always had a way of making headlines, but not always for the reasons he might hope. His recent appearance at the Detroit Economic Forum is yet another example of how his inflammatory rhetoric can ignite a firestorm of controversy, and this time it may have serious consequences for him in a critical swing state. While addressing the audience, Trump unleashed a scathing critique of Detroit, a city that has been in the midst of a significant resurgence under the Biden-Harris administration. The backlash was swift and severe, not only from local leaders and residents, but also from Democratic leaders and even celebrities. As early voting ramps up in Michigan, Detroiters and Michiganders more broadly are returning their ballots in record numbers, with a surge in enthusiasm and energy across Democratic strongholds. It seems Trump's attempt to belittle Detroit has backfired in spectacular fashion, and the numbers already suggest he could be facing significant losses in Michigan, a state that helped deliver his victory in 2016. In this article, we'll break down the fallout from Trump's insulting remarks, the ensuing response from prominent figures, and how early voting trends indicate a strong surge for the Democrats in the run-up to the 2024 presidential election. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to reaching 1,000 subscribers, but we can't do it without you. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe right now. And if you're already subscribed, give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment to let me know your thoughts. All right, let's dive right into it. Trump's blunder in Detroit. It all began with Donald Trump's speech at the Detroit Economic Forum, where he launched into a tirade about the city of Detroit, warning that if Vice President Kamala Harris were to win the presidency, our whole country will end up being like Detroit. In Trump's mind, this was a dire warning, evoking an image of urban decay, bankruptcy, and crime. But for the people of Detroit, it was an insult. The city has been undergoing a renaissance, experiencing growth and revitalization in many sectors. To have a former president disparage it in front of an audience full of Detroiters was nothing short of inflammatory. Almost immediately, the backlash began. The Detroit Economic Club, the very organization that hosted Trump's speech, was quick to distance itself from his remarks. The president of the club, who had introduced Trump, took to the local news to respond. "I might disagree," he said diplomatically, before defending the city's ongoing successes. "There are some really great things happening here." He went on to emphasize that Detroit was already making a comeback, without any help from Trump. The response from political leaders was even sharper. Detroit Mayor Mike Duggan quickly clapped back on social media, highlighting the city's recent accomplishments. Hosting the largest NFL draft in history, the Tigers making the playoffs, the Lions' unprecedented run toward the Super Bowl, and the fact that crime is down and the population is growing. His message was clear. Detroit is on the rise, and Trump's narrative was entirely disconnected from reality. The power of rapid response. Kamala Harris strikes back. While the local leaders in Detroit voiced their outrage, it was Vice President Kamala Harris and her team who delivered the most potent counterpunch. Within 24 hours of Trump's remarks, Harris's team released a powerful rapid response ad that took Trump to task for his comments. The ad was a masterclass in political messaging, blending imagery of Detroit's resurgence with a fiery, defiant tone. "They said we were dead," the ad begins, referring to Detroit's history of financial struggle. "But you know what we said? We said we rebuilt ourselves. We look out for each other, got our hands dirty, and put in the hard work." The ad culminates with a pointed rebuke of Trump. When he says our whole country will end up being like Detroit if she's your president, he should be so goddamn lucky. The speed with which Harris's team turned Trump's attack into an opportunity to rally voters was impressive. In a matter of hours, they had reframed Trump's insult as a badge of honor for Detroiters, a call to action to prove him wrong by showing up at the polls. Celebrity backlash. Jack White, Mallory McMorrow, and others chime in. Trump's comments about Detroit didn't just ruffle feathers among politicians and local leaders. They also drew the ire of prominent figures in the entertainment world. Jack White, the legendary musician and frontman of the White Stripes, didn't mince words in his response to Trump. What kind of political idiot insults Detroit while speaking to Detroiters? White wrote in an impassioned social media post, "Guess what, Trump, you ain't like us. You're going to lose Michigan bigly." White's sentiments were echoed by Mallory McMorrow, a Michigan state senator and rising star in the Democratic Party. She tweeted her disgust in no uncertain terms as a proud elected representative to tens of thousands of Detroiters. "F this guy. Don't come back." McMorrow's tweet went viral, further amplifying the chorus of voices calling out Trump for his tone-deaf remarks. Early voting surge in Michigan. The numbers don't lie. Perhaps the most significant indicator of the fallout from Trump's Detroit debacle is the data coming out of Michigan's early voting returns. According to the Michigan Secretary of State's office, the number of returned ballots is staggering. Over 543,000 ballots have already been returned, with more than 2 million absentee ballots requested. What's more telling is where these ballots are coming from: Detroit. The city leads the state in absentee ballot returns, outpacing the statewide return rate by 9%. For Democrats, this surge in early voting is a sign of overwhelming enthusiasm. Detroit has long been a Democratic stronghold, and if early voting trends are any indication, the city's voters are energized and ready to turn out in record numbers. Trump's repeated attacks on Detroit seem to have galvanized the electorate, with voters eager to prove him wrong at the ballot box. Trump's history of insulting key cities. It's worth noting that this isn't the first time Donald Trump has disparaged Detroit. In fact, he has a history of attacking urban centers that are predominantly Democratic, often with dog whistle undertones. In previous speeches, Trump has claimed that cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, and Atlanta are out of control and that their voters cheat. These remarks are often interpreted as thinly veiled racism, targeting cities with large black populations and attempting to sow doubt about the integrity of their elections. Just last month, Trump stood in front of an audience and repeated the same baseless claims. "They cheat in this state, especially in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Atlanta," he said. "If God came down from on high and said, 'I'm going to be your vote tabulator,' I would leave this podium right now." These unfounded allegations of election fraud have been a constant refrain for Trump, but in cities like Detroit, they're starting to wear thin. Voters are tired of being vilified by the former president, and early voting numbers suggest they're ready to push back. Detroit's comeback. Facts versus Trump's rhetoric. One of the most glaring flaws in Trump's attack on Detroit is how out of touch it is with the current reality of the city. Under the Biden-Harris administration, Detroit has experienced a significant resurgence. Factories are reopening, crime is down, and the city's population is growing for the first time in decades. Headlines about Detroit now celebrate its comeback rather than dwell on its past struggles. During the Trump administration, however, the picture was very different. Trump made lofty promises to Michigan workers, especially those in the auto industry, that he failed to keep. Factories continued to close, jobs were shipped overseas, and Detroit's economy struggled. Headlines from Trump's time in office told the story of a city still grappling with the aftermath of the Great Recession, while his administration did little to help. By contrast, the Biden-Harris administration has invested heavily in cities like Detroit. Through initiatives like the Infrastructure Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, and the CHIPS Act, Biden and Harris have funneled billions of dollars into rebuilding America's manufacturing base, including in Michigan. The administration's decision to stand with striking UAW workers on the picket line was a historic moment, underscoring their commitment to working-class Americans. The consequences for Trump: Michigan could be a lost cause. As early voting continues and Election Day draws closer, the data suggests that Trump's strategy of attacking Detroit is backfiring. Michigan is a key battleground state, and its 16 electoral votes could be crucial in determining the outcome of the 2024 presidential election. Trump won Michigan by a razor-thin margin in 2016, but he lost it in 2020. If the current early voting trends hold, it seems likely that Michigan will once again slip out of Trump's grasp. The enthusiasm among Democratic voters in Michigan, particularly in Detroit, is palpable. The backlash to Trump's remarks has only added fuel to the fire, with voters eager to show him that they won't be disrespected. In a state where every vote counts, Trump's decision to insult one of its largest and most important cities could prove to be a fatal mistake. Donald Trump's recent remarks about Detroit were not just a political misstep, they were a full-blown disaster. By insulting a city that is experiencing a remarkable resurgence, Trump alienated a key constituency in a critical swing state. The response from local leaders, national figures, and everyday Detroiters was swift and fierce, and early voting numbers indicate that his comments may have energized Democratic voters like never before. As Michigan voters continue to return their ballots in record numbers, it's becoming increasingly clear that Trump's strategy of attacking Democratic strongholds is backfiring. In Detroit, a city that has been at the heart of America's industrial and cultural revival, voters are ready to show Trump that they won't be taken for granted or insulted. The 2024 election is shaping up to be a pivotal moment for Michigan, and if current trends continue, it could be a state that delivers a decisive blow to Donald Trump's chances of reclaiming the White House.